Hi, everybody, and thank you. So imagine that you've abruptly awakened from a troublesome dream in which you were shipwrecked and floundering in the waves. Somehow, you managed to climb onto the cliffs of a rocky shore, but were not completely safe because at any second, a succession of waves could sweep you off your perch. How you managed to hold on to the edges of a large rock and kept yourself from being washed away, you cannot say. The storm finally passed, and the initial effort to save yourself gave way to a different gradation of fear and doubt as to whether saving yourself only prolonged the inevitability of perishing at the paws of menacing animals and snakes, heaven forbid, that you knew were there but could not see. You unclench your hands as you realize you're not lost at sea, nor has the hot morning sun, which awakened you on those rocks, aged you beyond recognition, but you're still a radiant-looking college sophomore sitting in a comfortable armchair in your mother's study, reading Bridglall and McAfee's The Second Machine Age, their 2014 book, The Second Machine Age. Why are you reading instead of whiling away time on social media? Because you've learned over the course of your short life that your parents have an uncanny ability to be right at the most inopportune time, and moreover, they expect a discussion of what you've read sooner rather than later. So you silence your phone, turn it face down for good measure, and continue reading. You learn that the Industrial Revolution, which included the invention of the steam engine in the 1700s, comprised the first machine age. This age championed machines or power systems that amplified the physical strengths of the labor force and required them to exercise control and discretion over increasingly complex inventions. At that time, labor and machines complemented each other. Bridglall and McAfee contend that we're at an inflection point today, at the cusp of what they're calling the second machine age, which is distinctly different from the first in that we're not only automating a larger number of cognitive tasks, but also automating the decision-making processes in highly sophisticated control systems. Consequently, we now have intelligent technologies that can interpret medical images, advise oncologists, conduct legal research, evaluate vast amounts of data, and analyze stocks. Some intelligent machines now appear to reduce human error, self-driving cars, for instance, and newer cars with automatic emergency braking systems, while others can outwit someone in chess, Jeopardy, and even Go, a 2,500-year-old board game considered far more challenging than chess. The exponential growth in computing power is attributed to Moore's law as one of the forces making the technological innovations in the second machine age possible. Moore's law, advanced by Intel co-founder Gordon Moore in 1965, estimated that the computational processing power derived from the speed and power of microchips would double roughly every year. Moore later updated this projection to every 2 years, and his estimates, which have held up for the past 5 decades, has contributed to a simultaneous increase in the rate of technological change and the acceleration of the rate of change. So you take a deep breath because as a young person who has recently plowed through a 2017 McKinsey report, you realize that technological change is only one of several forces acting on your world. The others are globalization, climate change, biodiversity loss, and population growth. Wow, this is heady stuff. So you decide to take a walk because this warrants some sorting through. After all, your parents are sure to ask what you think this might mean for your generation. As you walk, you recall reading Craig Mundy's thoughts in an interview Tom Friedman recounts in his 2016 book, Thank You for Being Late. Mr. Mundy, a former chief of research and strategy at Microsoft, suggests that the accelerated rate of change in play exceeds our individual and institutional ability to adapt. So this spawns a sense of dislocation or the feeling that we cannot keep up. So this phenomena is different from disruption, which happens when a new innovation renders something antiquated or a skill obsolete. Friedman also noted an interview with Eric Astrow-Teller, CEO of Google X Research and Developmental Lab, who add that while technological innovations can now happen in 5 to 7 years, maybe less, it actually takes us 10 to 15 years to adapt to them. Labor markets, however, are not the only areas transformed by digital technology. Our governing, regulatory, educational, and social systems will also be affected if they're not already. So you suddenly stop in the middle of the street, intrigued with the thought that if it is the case that our learning and training systems are behind the curve, given the rate and acceleration of change, and even if the teaching of basic skills are a challenge, how then do we address these dynamics in ways that propel as many of us forward? So, do we start with the question, what are schools for? Seth Godin suggests that schools are still products of the industrial age, which emphasize indoctrinating students into obedience and compliance. While this strategy has worked well in the past, the radiating effect of dislocation and disruption, together with the challenges of adapting to accelerations that really amplify the magnitude and scope of chronic social issues such as global poverty, health epidemics, gender inequality, income polarization, and human mobility, both voluntary and involuntary. So it suggests that it no longer makes sense for you and your peers to be socialized to lives of compliance and conformity. The McKinsey report you've just read urged education systems to evolve to meet the needs of a changed workplace. This means a new emphasis on creativity, emotional intelligence, and leading and coaching others. Sir Ken Robinson, Deborah Meyer, and the late Ted Sizer and Maxine Green, and others of their ilk may be onto something when they urge faculty to craft course content that encourage greater independence of mind, creativity, and critical thinking. But achieving these outcomes will not be easy, particularly as they warrant continual reconceptualization of curriculum to emphasize interdisciplinary and experiential projects that develop students' minds rather than testing them in ways that provide, at best, limited information of what they know, understand, and can do. And this can lead to deeply misinformed views of students' potentials and their abilities. So at a systems level, the cost of not evolving is enormous. You remember seeing an older McKinsey report estimating that the US gross domestic product could have increased from 1.3 trillion to 2.3 trillion in 2008 if achievement gaps in the US and high-achieving countries such as Finland and South Korea were narrowed. Nationally, GDP could have increased from 2 to 4%, or between 310 billion to 525 billion in 2008, if there were increases in Black and Latino student performance. So on an income level, GDP would have increased from 3 to 5%, or 400 billion to 670 billion in 2008, if achievement gaps between low income and more affluent students were smaller. And so the GDP would have increased from 3 to 5%, or 425 billion to 700 billion in 2008 if gaps between low and high achieving states in the United States were narrowed. So in that report, McKinsey asserted that, quote, the persistence of these educational achievement gaps imposes on the United States the economic equivalent of a permanent national recession. So, now with the sense that someone in your neighborhood may be puzzled as to why you're simply standing in the middle of the street thinking weighty things and looking lost, you resume your walk, because that someone would surely understand if you were caught in the distracted clutch of your phone, but may call the authorities if you're exhibiting signs of critically thinking about issues that'll affect not only your generation, but those that follow. So McKinsey's estimates are really a call to action, you think, as you listen to the slow crunch of gravel beneath your boots. And despite the tepid pace of change in the dominant culture, there are educational institutions that recognize the diverse talents of their students and encourage their curiosity and creativity with a curriculum that's interdisciplinary, diverse, and evolving, and focus instructional supports for teachers who facilitate deep learning and close collaborations with the community at large. But it's more than academic for these institutions because they recognize that students' acquisition of certain habits of mind, such as the ability to exercise discerning judgment and to understand phenomena from different and multiple perspectives, hinge in part on an institution's ability to provide access to positive social networks and learning environments in which students can develop an agentic perspective or the belief that they're capable of authoring their own futures. You lift your head and smile, you're glad you're taking a walk, and thrilled that in this pause to sort out your thoughts, ideas, and yes, your feelings, which have their own intelligence, you're realizing how essential it is that you and your peers not react in ways that exacerbate the issues, but rather that you take control of mediating your world by exploring insights from past and present ideas, including those that make sense but don't have currency. Jules Poincaré, the French mathematician, theoretical physicist, engineer, philosopher of science, and Northrop Frye, the literary theorist, would applaud this adventure into deep contemplative reading in different disciplines, including the sciences and literature. You're beginning to appreciate that this sort of deep work is crucial and can counteract the internet's capacity to reduce our ability to engage long and complex narratives. You find that the net's focus on immediacy and efficiency has the potential to change your neural circuitry, a dynamic you'd like to avoid because you'd prefer to preserve your ability to interpret complex ideas and to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks such as making your own connections, developing new ideas, and drawing your own conclusions. And no doubt these abilities over time will become increasingly rare and valuable. So it's becoming clear to you that if you want to change things about the world around you, you need to use your imagination, and the ability to read deeply and widely can provide the language you need to gauge the collective of human experience and to apply it to your own world with intention, integrity, and intelligence. Well, you muse as you decide to extend your walk. You may not have been shipwrecked like Robinson Crusoe, but like Crusoe, you've chosen to exercise your ability to emotionally and intellectually anchor yourself. Aristotle himself would recognize the power of that choice and as it unfolds in the present and future you. So thank you.